The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Stephen Sakach here with my co-host, Tullio Siragusa, and we've got a couple special guests who we'll introduce in a moment. So in April, we had the opportunity to speak with Matt Dyer, CEO of Merchants Fleet, about building community and connection in business. And that conversation introduced us to the company's Move America initiative. And so Matt described Move America as a multi-year vision to help customers, win, sell, and remain productive. But he also emphasized something essential. Even the strongest strategy cannot succeed unless the how is equally strong. And the how here includes culture, values, leadership behavior, empathy, communication, and the ability to connect every employee to the direction of the organization, things we love to talk about here. So today we are continuing that conversation with two of the initiative's internal sponsors, and we will explore why culture cannot belong to one function alone and how leaders across an organization create that alignment and what it takes to turn a strategic vision into daily behavior. Tullio, introduce our guests today.
My pleasure. Our guests today are Alicia Hart, Chief People Officer, and Jeanine Charlton, Chief Technology Officer at Merchants Fleet. Alicia leads the people side of the organization, helping shape employee experience, leadership development, engagement, and cultural systems that support sustainable growth, while Jeanine brings the perspective of a senior operational and enterprise leader who helps champion Move America across the organization. Her involvement reflects a critical principle behind this initiative, which is culture is not simply HR's responsibility. Every leader has a role in aligning teams, modeling values, and connecting strategy to execution. Together, Alicia and Jeanine offer a powerful view into how Move America becomes more than a company message, how it becomes shared ownership, leadership behavior, and culture in action. Alicia and Jeanine, welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast. It's going to be a great follow-up to our conversation with Matt.
Thank you. Great to
Thank
be
you for having us. Excited to be here.
So Alicia, maybe cue this up for us a little bit. Let our audience in on kind of the Move America initiative and from a people and culture perspective, what does Move America mean inside the organization as well?
Yeah, so Jeanine and I were chatting beforehand, and this was one of our highlights of our careers at Merchants, being a part of this and co-leading this together. And Moving America really was designed for us to answer a simple question for all employees and our clients, for that matter. So how do we help people understand where we're going? Why does it matter to them? And how are they going to contribute to getting us there? And we got to do this in a really unique way. We partnered with a group called the Storytellers. And the result of that was a 6-chapter narrative, a story that we could all connect to. And it really reflected the merchant's journey, where we've come from, where we're going, how we're going to get there. And it did it in a very unique way, in a way that all employees could experience through visuals, through exercises, through a really important launch. And I think what was really special about that and unique is that it was done so through, the launch was handled through our leaders. So our leaders delivered these stories about this narrative to all of our employees. So as leaders across the organization, so everyone could see themselves in it. And that's really where I think that cultural aspect came from. Because it wasn't just, here's our strategy and here's what we're going to do. It was, here's where we've been, here's where we're going, through the eyes of employees across the company. So it helped in a number of ways, and I'm excited we're going to get to share a lot of that. It's been really transformational, a lot of fun, and has had a huge impact on our culture.
Yeah, doing it through a story sort of narrative is resonates much more and sticks with people much more than, like the 3 or 4 words on the wall, right? Or something like that, where it's just, there's that disconnect and it's not as easy to follow until you put yourself in the shoes.
Yeah, what was really, if I could add to it too, Stephen, I think what was really kind of, powerful for me is just seeing, we had probably 300 people come together in one room. We had rented out a big kind of conference room where we brought people together. The visual experience that we created about having kind of a portal to the future, and we asked employees to write down kind of their vision for the company on a go forward basis, and they created these cards, and we got to read some of these cards, Alicia and I, and it was just a great way to get people really engaged and to have their voice kind of matter kind of throughout this experience. So it was just a very engaging event, and the receptivity of our employees to do something like this was something really special.
I like that. I'm gonna have to borrow that. So yeah, I know we've had kind of a thing with our employees where we talked about their purpose and each of them kind of articulating kind of a higher purpose, but yeah, like a vision for the company and getting them involved in that way, and then sharing that with everyone. I love that.
So Jeanine, your role as an internal sponsor demonstrate that the culture is not only owned by people, the people function. Why was that important for leaders from across the organization to actively champion Move America?
Well, I think, from my perspective, right, being in technology, and our role is really to serve and to engage across the entire enterprise, right? That's really why my function exists. And I think it really kind of drives that cross-functional commitment where you turn strategy really into execution, right? Our role is to really be, I think, the glue that brings everybody together, kind of based on where we sit in the organization, to drive really strong collaboration, to bring clarity kind of across our initiatives, to really focus on making sure, that our teams have the tools, the systems, and the visibility they need to move with confidence in a really meaningful way. And I think, it also reinforces that culture is really a shared leadership responsibility, and we take that, really seriously. I think as leaders, across functions, when they're visibly aligned in terms of like, how do we go after prioritization? How do we communicate with each other? How do we make sure that we follow through, right, in a really credible way? Builds that confidence and consistency across the organization, which for us, given that we're at a really critical growth period in our company history, it's really important and imperative for us.
So how do leaders prevent the strategy from feeling like a top-down message? I think that's kind of.
I want to add to that because quite often that's how it is, right? And then leaders spend a considerable amount of time selling the strategy, convincing, having town halls, just considerable amount of time doing that work, trying to push it through. So I just wanted to add that caveat. I'm curious to hear your feedback from Stephen's question.
Yeah. Alicia, do you want me to take it, and then maybe you can?
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Add to that, right? So, I would say it is leadership's job, right? So us as an executive leadership team, it is our job to define the company strategy, right? That's something that we invested a significant amount of time into in defining that strategy. And then from there, though, each of us kind of take that strategy, and we have to go back into our respective functions and then develop the actual initiatives and plans for how we're going to execute against that, right? And that's not just a leadership responsibility. This is where we engage the broader organization to really understand what is it going to take in order to be able to execute upon those initiatives, and really getting the commitment and the buy-in, from all of our team members in terms of the role that they play and why that matters. I think for us, it's really important to always tie it back to what you do and why it matters, and how that kind of fits into the bigger company strategy. So when people can see on a day-to-day basis what they've done and the impact that that's had, it brings, I think, really special meaning. It drives employee morale, I think, in a really meaningful way. So We don't just develop it and then push it down. We really do look at how we develop those plans and able to bring those initiatives to life. So getting kind of the broader organization very involved in that process.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of add to that, I think that's one of the special things about the Move America initiative is once all that work was done, you had an experience in which everyone got to go through together. So everybody felt like they were part of the journey. It wasn't people just kind of talking to you, telling you what you needed to do. You were interacting, you were describing how you were going to deliver exceptional client service and how your role was going to have an impact on that. And I think when you can make people feel included and valued and truly let them know they're a big part of that, it removes a lot of resistance and it allows you to accelerate that adoption. And when I think about change management, that becomes really important because if you're doing that in a silo, people are experiencing that change differently from group to group to group. And when you can bring people together and they are going through change together, it feels less scary. And it feels like you're a part of something bigger and that you can have some control over it. And that's where I think this was really special in delivering that important aspect of rolling out our strategy.
Can you think of any moments like when what that alignment kind of looked like? Like some examples where it really stood out to you?
I think one area that Jeanine, I feel like you should maybe talk a little bit about is our Bury the Past section, because I think that was a vulnerable moment that let people kind of come together.
Yeah. So, when we took our leaders through this, so we went through kind of rolling out kind of this, this initiative to all of our leaders initially before we put it in front of the broader kind of leadership team. And so one of the exercises that I led was what we called a Bury the Past exercise. And, it was really about acknowledging, some of the challenges that the company had gone through in the prior kind of 3 years of our history. And there were some really difficult times. And I think for those, those leaders that had been here and that had lived through that, it was an opportunity to acknowledge it, because you can't forget about it, but it's okay to acknowledge it. But it was really symbolic in that we gave each of those leaders what we call the Bury the Past card, and we asked them to just write it down. This was a very personal exercise that we asked the leaders to go through.
It sounds like a almost like counseling session in a way, right?
Yeah, I think actually it was, Stephen, for many people, myself included, where, I think it's healthy to acknowledge it, right? It's oftentimes we don't take the opportunity to do that. We just expect as leaders, like, suck it up, move on. We're not going to talk about it, right? But we're all human and we all need that opportunity to just have that moment. And so we had them write it down on their card. And then we bought like a big box. It was a wooden box with a lock and key on it. And we had everybody put their card in the box. And it was like, okay, it's time. We're going to move forward, right? And the intention was like we buried the box. So it was really well received. And I thought it was just a really kind of unique way to kind of acknowledge that.
Yeah, and Jeanine threw the key out right in front of everybody, and we got to do that. And I think when we talk about being authentic, vulnerable, having empathy, having a moment like that where it was okay to let everybody have that therapeutic moment was really powerful and built a connection. And I think one of the proof points from something like that is how employees feel afterwards. And we talk a lot about psychological safety and having that at work, and I think that's a really important thing to have at work. It makes you feel valued. It makes you feel comfortable speaking up. So that was an area where we saw a big increase on our employee survey, 13 points go up following this event. So I think just another example of how, it's not just about accomplishing and executing always. It's about how people feel and how they're valued and do they feel comfortable. So.
Very interesting rituals. Those rituals, they're meaningful. Actually, it reminds me in the Jewish culture, there's a ritual like that during Rosh Hashanah. They call the burning of the Hametz, but everybody makes a list of all the stuff they want to let go in the previous year and then burn it. It's pretty interesting. It's been around for thousands of years. Yeah. But if you don't give people a chance to sort of clear their list, it's hard for people to be present in a meeting because they're thinking about the wrong that they were done or the thing that they were misunderstood for. It's hard to get them present. And when you're going through a transformation, you need everybody totally present. So any ritual that gets rid of the lists, I've even seen it where you literally do it in person, where you just kind of like, you did this and this is how I felt, and you just kind of let it go and the other person says nothing. Just to let it go is so powerful. And you're right, companies don't do that enough. Most companies don't do it. I know Booz Allen does it. They circle up and their teams actually do a list clearing on a regular basis. And it's pretty amazing the intimacy they create amongst their team. So very encouraged to hear that. I hope more companies are listening and thinking about doing stuff like that.
We've had many of our leaders too coming out of this, right? Because one of the things they were asked to do was to kind of take this initiative back with their respective teams and kind of in a smaller group, right, go through some similar discussions and some similar exercises. So it's been interesting to hear how many people have used that exercise as part of like their individual team kind of discussion. So it's had an impact for sure.
Yeah, I love, so we talk about scaling things. And so this sounds like this, it's like this great example of, systems can be so cold and machine-like, and that we just forget the human elements in there. And that's why we talk about bliss and building love in the scalable systems, is really trying to bring that care back into everything. And this is this perfect example of kind of this system that you treat the company as a whole as this living organism, versus treating it as like a, an industrial machinery that just, churns away, gets good results until, it just plows through people over and over again in the process. So in Matt's episode, he said that the what of a strategy matters, but the how determines whether it becomes sustainable. And so the how includes, the values, leadership, connection, communication, service, empathy, and the way teams work together. Alicia, what people in leadership systems, help move America become real in the daily employee experience? I mean, I thought this is a great example, but thinking about that systems thought a little bit further.
Yeah, I think it stems from involving more than just HR in those systems too. And one of the things that we did as a part of this initiative was a complete values refresh. And we leveraged what we called our culture crew, which were leaders across the organization. And so it wasn't a consultant, it wasn't HR, it wasn't marketing. It was leaders across the company who dissected our existing values, looked at our past, where we are today and where we're heading, and was really very intentional about it. And I think that in itself helped started to create a system of how that's going to be rolled out. And one of the really important moments was their kind of light went off, and they were talking about service and how that's always been core to merchants, and that's our guiding value. So we have to take that and run with that. And because they were the leaders that identified that, you can see that kind of cascade through all of their teams. And we have a tagline called One Team, All Heart, All Hustle. And it's all about service internally and externally. We've also adopted what we now call the Hart Award. So employees get to nominate other employees for demonstrating our values, and we get to recognize those employees, whether they were nominated or win. And then equally, we also went through an exercise of redesigning our core competencies for our performance management process and integrated some of those core values into that as well. So it's kind of like a spider web that has to touch every corner of the organization. But you could have any, I could have done the performance management step, but that's never going to work unless you have the leaders and employees feeling connected to it. And that's really, I think, was really special. One of the things we did on stage is we had some of those leaders come up at the event, and we had a wheel, kind of like your Wheel of Fortune wheel, where we spun it and it would land on one of the values, and one of the leaders would talk about what that value meant to them. And we had this catchbox mic, and we would throw it into the audience, and then one of our employees could speak about it, what it meant to them, and give an example too. So that, I think, it all starts with connection, and then you can start to embed it in systems after that.
Yeah, I love those examples, and I love the focus on service too. I think that's where we often find like people really seeing the why of what they're doing is when they start thinking in that kind of regard.
And the reality is, not enough companies focus on the how. It's easy to design something on paper, but the actual execution, living it, is a whole different story. So Jeanine, like from your perspective.
Jeanine, wait a sec, Tullio. Jeanine is about to say something. I want to make sure she gets
sorry.
that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, this translates really even beyond, right, what we did for our employees, because at the heart of it all is how we serve our clients, right? I mean, we are here to serve our clients. So, this one team, all heart, all hustle, is not just a tagline. It's something that's really embedded very deeply in our culture and in everything that we've done. So, we have created Zoom backgrounds that have this tagline on it, with kind of the Moving America initiative and a refresh of our values. And we're going to be going through some rebranding in the building to just incorporate kind of a refresh of the values in this initiative as well. So, this is just another way that is very symbolic of the work that we've done around this Moving America initiative.
I love that. Those things, reinforcement is so key to all this. I don't remember which company it was, but it stuck with me probably for 20 plus years. There was a CEO that went into an organization and had the bathroom fixtures, the cold to the warm, switched just to disrupt the status quo that everybody was used to. It was one extra step to disrupt the status quo, to get people thinking about being uncomfortable and changing things. And that just stuck with me, like going to that umpteenth degree of change to make the need of change stick. And so from your perspective, Jeanine, outside of a people function, what do you think is required for executives and managers to reinforce the culture through their own decisions and even their own behaviors? And how do you help them through that process?
Well, I would say culture is really not what I think leaders say in the calm moments, because I think that's the easy part, right? It's really, culture is really shaped in those moments that test execution, right? When you're under pressure, to meet either a client demand or some, internal commitment to your shareholders, right? That's what really tests, I think, us. And I think people watch how we as leaders communicate under pressure, how quickly we are focused on removing obstacles, and whether those commitments are followed through with consistency, right? It's not just one time. It's just, do they consistently see that that's how we're behaving and that's how we're reacting? So I think that's really critical and really kind of demonstrates, in those moments, how we're going to respond.
I think like when you've got that strong enough culture in there, when someone is, say, misaligned with that culture, it really stands out, and it almost like self-correct, within whatever team it is or something, right? Do you guys kind of feel that now versus like maybe in the bury the past era, where you could see the culture has changed so much at some point that where, stuff just really does stand out at some point because it's just misaligned?
Yeah, I think what it does is, for me, what I've seen is you have people at different areas of the curve. So one of the toolkits we gave to the leaders was, where is your team on this roller coaster of change, and where are they on the journey? And you might have some members that are at a high point and some members that are at a low point. And what I've witnessed is that ability for the team to kind of pick each other up and help them through that journey a little bit. And you certainly will have people along the way that self-select out or make a decision not to continue. But I think what's really remarkable is, because we did have a couple of more challenging years, those people that are still here are now getting to witness and be part of moving it forward and seeing their efforts and their hard work come to fruition. So it's allowing kind of the newer employees to kind of pair well with those that have been here and all experience this journey together and move forward. So it's been interesting, and we're going through these team sessions that Jeanine was sharing with you before, and we're getting the results of those now, and it's been really remarkable to see.
All right, we've got an audience question. Let's bring that up and see what this is from LinkedIn user. If your two departments had to share one single metric for success, what would it be?
I would say our client NPS, Jeanine, right?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
All right. Oh, we got another question.
Maybe on that point, right? Because this is such an important one for us, but maybe you can talk about what we've done for the company at large on this particular.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Again, can't reiterate our Heart and Hustle initiative enough. That is all about driving the best client experience across the company. And one of the things that Matt has done really, really exceptionally well since he came was really explain to every single employee how their role makes an impact in that journey, whether it's directly or indirectly. And so we started at first by transforming like our goals at the top of the organization. In our leadership bonuses, there's a line item tied to client NPS. And then this year we rolled it out to the entire company and offered an additional bonus on top of the existing bonuses for achieving a certain level of NPS score this year for our clients. So every single employee in the company has that metric and is looking at that.
Yeah, I love that. I love it, tying it into the incentives too, because that's like really kind of a bottom line, what's in the client's best interest sort of thing, right, in order to achieve that. All right, so we've got another question here. Let's pull that up. How do you make sure remote workers feel part of this culture shift?
I love this question. So we are very, very intentional about our engagement strategy, and we do a lot of surveys of our employees. So are you remote? Are you on site? What do you like? What do you don't like? So that two-way feedback loop is really, really important. So when we designed the Moving America launch, specifically this year, we designed an experience for on-site and we designed an experience for remote. So we took a full day to do this. In the morning was all on-site, and then in the afternoon we duplicated it, but in a different way that allowed us all to be on Zoom together and have interactions and sessions together that were more appropriate for that virtual experience. And then I think the next really critical step is allowing those leaders to take it to their team sessions and giving them the tools to run their own session that can be done virtually or on site and getting that experience. So it's all about belonging and inclusion, but in the right way and designed in the way for the experience of the person on the other end. Just like you would do for a client, right? Mm-hmm. You would go out of your way to make sure a client has a good experience, regardless whether they were going to be on site or on a Zoom session. So,
yeah, and we do that not just for this specific initiative, right? But any events that we do across the company, we always keep in mind, those employees that are working remote, and how do we create an experience that's going to be meaningful and impactful for them as well. So this just wasn't a one and done. This is something that is really just a part of what we do.
Very nice. it seems you guys have been very intentional in creating shared ownership, building more trust, and the impact that has on clients. Matt shared that the community becomes measurable when it shows up for clients through teamwork, through collaboration, service quality, retention, and trust. And I think none of us will disagree with that. Alicia, how do you help the employees understand that culture is not separate from client experience, but one of the things that directly shapes it? You mentioned it a little bit. I'd like to see if we can maybe talk to us about how to help the employees connect to that. What's worked for you guys in doing that?
Yeah, for me, it's all about, I think we talked about it before, consistency and communication. And so we translated following this launch, we have monthly meetings called Move Monthlies. And a big part of that conversation every month is how are we impacting clients? And we'll talk about the different examples and stories around the company that are doing that. And I think that's, again, those stories are really important because then people can be like, oh, I saw that team helping this client XYZ, and I helped somebody on that team, by giving them a tool or resource to deliver that success to that client. So it's making sure those connections. And so for my team, we're certainly not directly client facing, but when we have our discussions, it's all about, we hired 3 people into that team. We found the right cultural fit for those people. Those people are delivering exceptional client experience. So it's connecting the dots and sharing the symbols of change. That was a big component of what we talked about with this is you're going to see change happen. You need to share those symbols, you need to communicate them, and you need to do so on a consistent basis. So whether that's in our Move Monthly or our employee newsletters, or in our internal staff meetings, we're making this conversation first and foremost.
So, Jeanine, Matt spoke about the problem of like functional silos and reminded us that the client experience, the company, the organization horizontally, not department by department. As a senior functional leader, how do you help create alignment across boundaries?
Yeah, it's something that, we take very seriously in our function, because I think we sit in a very unique spot in the organization, right? When you think about kind of initiatives that we get to work on, you're typically having to work kind of across the enterprise, right? In a really meaningful way. And so we are very intentional about making sure that we're bringing together all the right stakeholders and really trying to work through all of the right kind of use cases to make sure that we're creating the best possible result, whether that's something that's being delivered to the client or something that's been done internally, right? It's very rare that you're working on something that only touches a slice of a department, if you will. More than not, it's really going to touch across the entire enterprise. So we've had to get really, really good at this to make sure that we're really kind of working through all of that to make sure that everybody's kind of role in a process is really worked through, and delivers a really good result. Not always easy because you're having to bring together a lot of people who oftentimes think that, what they need is the most important thing and we should just move faster so we can get it done. But oftentimes you might have to slow down a little bit to get a better result by incorporating all of the key stakeholders' kind of perspective into a solution that we're delivering.
I'd love for both of you to answer this. What has sponsoring Move America taught you personally about the relationship between strategy and culture?
I think for me, an interesting thing that has come out of this is just the power of storytelling, and as opposed to just like delivering a message on a PowerPoint, right? We spent months designing an experience, right, that would really engage, I think, not only our leaders, but every employee across the company in a very unique way. And so, for me, it was never underestimate the power of storytelling. is what I think stood out the most to me.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was all about how important and how deeply human everything we do is. And if people can feel connection, energy from each other, and compassion, they will do anything. And I think that's what makes me really proud to be here at Merchants is we have that heart and hustle that allows ourselves to be truly our authentic self and show up every day and work hard for each other. And that's what makes me want to come to work every day. So,
on the show we talk about love a lot, but really we're talking about care, responsibility, trust, connection, commitment to people. All these things are a form of what we just put them into the bucket of just love. This is some kind of love. It's the heart, like your heart and hustle, right? It's that part of it. Alicia, so how does that or what should that role of love be like in business, that role of the heart in business?
Yeah, I think what I would do is I would tie it to the fact that people don't leave jobs very often for money or for any other reason. Their most important working relationship that they have is with their direct manager. And if we talk about culture, that person is deeply responsible for the culture of their team and delivering the culture of the business. And I think showing compassion and love to your team, if you can do that, they will follow you. They will work hard for you. And I think that shows up in recognizing the moments you can push and recognizing the moments where you have to back off a little and help support someone through a difficult time. It's also recognizing your role as a leader, as a people leader, to make sure that your team understands the why. So, why are we doing this? It feels like we're fighting something really hard. Why are we doing it this way? If they understand the why and feel part of that why, again, that's showing that compassion and love. I think that's where it starts, and then it grows from there. You feel it for your team and your coworkers. Jeanine and I have been working together for 8 years. I'm so grateful for the partnership we've had together, and that just makes work special. So.
Very nice. Now, Jeanine, how does that same sense of care show up when you lead a function or help champion culture across the broader organization?
In terms of how does love and leadership show up? Is that
the sense of care?
It really comes down to, look, we're all humans, and we all want to feel valued in the work that we're doing. So I think it's just in terms of how we show up, right, to be supportive across kind of the business that we support, and people knowing that we're here to support them, right? Our job is to serve. And we talk about this a lot, right? We want to position everybody in the company to be successful in what they're doing. And so how we show up is everything. If people think, that we don't care and that we're not going to go the extra mile to work with them to help execute some work, whether it be for a client or some other function across the company, people know that. People can see that in how you show up and how you engage, right? So for us, it's showing up in the right way and showing compassion and caring about the people that you work with, right? Not just beyond what's this task that we have to do, but really getting to know people and showing genuine concern for another human being.
I love it. So for each of you, really quick, what is one practical lesson you could offer leaders, trying to align strategy and culture inside their organizations? Jeanine, go first.
I would say don't underestimate the power of getting that right. and really take the time to get the teams aligned to the importance of this, right? I think you have to do that. You have to take the time. And it's one thing that I am so grateful for Matt for being so intentional about getting this right? Getting our company strategy right, and then how we get the rest of the organization aligned behind that. We spent a great deal of time, but the impact that it's had, and we're very early in this journey, is incredible. And I think we're just getting started, right? So having that commitment from a great leader like Matt has been a game changer for us at Merchants. And I'm so grateful for his leadership.
Alicia?
Yeah, it's difficult to answer that question differently than Jeanine, other than saying that, creating that space for really developing the strategy, but also making sure everybody understands it. And, we had a 20-point improvement in our understanding of our strategy after this. So 92% of our employees say they understand our strategy and they know the role they play in it. And that is directly as a result of creating the time and space to do it right. So.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Alicia, Jeanine, if those who want to learn more about merchant fleets and the Move America initiative, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm easily found on LinkedIn, so you can certainly take a look at my name. Also, obviously, our company website at merchantsfleet.com.
All right. Thank you both for being on the show, Jeanine, Alicia. Appreciate all your insights. And I think for our listeners, you can kind of tell, really how thoughtful they've kind of audited their business by that Hart portion, I think, of the Heart and Hustle. And I think that's really, that's one of the keys to what we're talking about here, is really just going through and infusing your business with that kind of thing. That's what will bring that culture together and everyone aligned behind it. And it just little by little makes a lot eventually after you're, like they said, they're just on the start of this journey, it feels like. So thank you for listening and joining us on the Bliss Business Podcast, and we will see you next time.